We are top of the league. Say we are top of the league. And welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Gooner Talk, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. And this episode, of course, with it being a post-match day show, our raw reaction episode of our win over West Ham United. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in and appreciate your time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for dropping a like, which I hope that you will do. And thank you for basking, of course, in the glory of Arsenal sitting top of the table after 7 games played in the Premier League and going into the international break clear of Liverpool. Who would have thought? Who would have thought, after those games at Anfield and Manchester City, that Arsenal would indeed be sitting where they are right now? But they are indeed where they are right now. And it is a great place to be. Good morning to you all joining us live in the chat box. Thank you so much, as always, for doing so. Keith just saying we've got Black Sean, we've got Glenn and Martin, we've got Amber Lee and Keith and K West. We've got Z, we've got Trader, we've got Paul, we've got Julian, Rancid, we've got Barry and Dwight. Good morning to you, to Emmanuel and Paul and Runs with Cows. We've got Evan and S. We've got Dan. Good morning. Thank you so much to every one of you, as always, for tuning in. Greatly appreciate you being here. It's always an absolute joy to speak with you. And of course, we've got plenty to discuss in today's episodes regarding yesterday's win over West Ham, and of course the rest of the games that were also going on, because there is plenty of relevance, of course, to Arsenal's success in going top of the table that exists elsewhere in London on Saturday afternoon. Lovely stuff, mate. Let's jump into said mate like Ange Postecoglou. Let's jump into today's slide, shall we? I think we should. We begin, of course, with just kind of a broad overlook of yesterday's victory, which was, I think, it wasn't the most enthralling or dynamic or mercurial games that you're ever going to witness, but what it was indeed a brilliant afternoon of very little worry or concern, I would say. I just think that games like this, sometimes you take them for granted, where you just limit the opposition to just so very little. You dominate, you win. It was just a very meticulous piece of work that just dismantled West Ham United. This is a game that Arsenal have lost twice in the last 2 seasons. It's a game in which we find ourselves on the wrong end of a result. We were so not worthy of losing either of those 2 games in the previous 2 seasons. And what's a shame is, of course, in 23-24, had we won that game, Arsenal would indeed have got the 3 points that would have made them champions. At least we can look at it by a mathematical way in that sense. But top of the league, victory against the London rival, who West Ham just got so they lack so much class, don't they? I mean, think about how like Crystal Palace responded to the loss of Emirates Eze. But whenever Declan Rice steps out on a pitch against West Ham, it's just boo. But it got us £105 million. Boo! He won us a European trophy. Boo! Boo that man! Boo that man! He only deserves boos. It's so nice, isn't it? And I think that, and we'll come on to Declan Rice's goal, of course, and his celebration as well, I think was quite telling. Very telling indeed. Moving into the lineup, of course, it was a lineup that I think a lot of people wanted to see. Rice, Eze, and Odegaard in a midfield 3. And Arteta speaking after the game, I thought was quite interesting, actually. And what he spoke about in the post-match press conference about, clearly this was something they wanted to try, but they didn't get long enough to kind of practice it. And, of course, you will see my thoughts on that in just a second. But he said... I think it was Art DeRoche asked the question, who isn't bottom of the fantasy league anymore, I should add. At least I don't think he is, which is definitely worth pointing out. I think I'm pretty much near the bottom now of that league. But he was asked about kind of, would you try that midfield again? And he said, yes, we need more chemistry and we need longer periods, because the first part, until they start to live it and find the solutions and the tools that are going to allow them to flourish, sometimes it takes a while in the team, but it never happened because it was too early with Martin's injury. And that's kind of where we move to now is Martin Odegaard's injury. No Premier League player in the history of the game has ever come off at before half time in 3 consecutive home league matches. 3 consecutive home league matches. It's not a record we want, but it's a record that Martin has now got. And it's just so unlucky. I mean, Arsenal's fortune when it comes to injuries are just, I mean, what can you say? I mean, what can you say about Arsenal's fortune and particularly Odegaard this season? 3 impact injuries, 3 unfortunate moments where he's kind of either fallen awkwardly or he's clashed or he's, and it looked a very painful challenge. It really did. A real bang of the knees, and I think he's in a brace as well. After which Arteta confirmed after the match that indeed, yes, he is in a brace, which is not ideal. He said, well, I think he had a clash of knee to knee and immediately he was uncomfortable. I just spoke to him and he's not positive about it. He's got a brace on. We'll have to wait and see from the doctors, but we haven't been very lucky with that either. We haven't had him since the start of the season for one reason or another. The shoulder injury twice and now this. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see the extent of that injury and find out the solutions. But obviously, he's our captain. He's a player that gives us completely different dimensions with things that he can do, especially in attack. So let's wait, and hopefully it's not that bad. And it is just so gutting, because there were some really nice things going on. It's really, really, really impressive, the passes that were going through. There was a great pass through to Timber that probably should have been scored. There was a great pass through to Saka, which then led to that Eza chance, of course, which he, again, absolutely should have scored and went over the bar. But it's just so frustrating, indeed, that we're kind of in this position with Odegaard as well. Someone in the chat box saying the guy's made of glass. I mean, who on earth? Claire, come on. He's not made of glass, not at all. He took a knee-to-the-knee collision. I mean, some of the most painful injuries can come from those knee-to-knee collisions, and shoulders in particular. Shoulders are really complicated injuries, and thankfully he's recovered from them very quickly. It's just bad luck. It is just bad luck, and hopefully it's going to be fine. Again, Paul's saying he seems incredibly fragile. It's not about being fragile. If you look at each of the incidents in isolation, they are really painful, unfortunate landings or clashes that have led to these impact injuries. But he's recovered from them very quickly, and we hope that will be the case again. We've got an international break. I don't really want to see him now playing for Norway, that's for sure. I want to see him rested and recovered and make sure he's back after the international break, fit and fresh and ready to go once again, because he is a big loss if we were indeed to lose him. But he was replaced. Arteta had a decision to make after Odegaard came off. Instead of bringing on Waneri or Marino and keeping it kind of, with potentially a more attacking option in place of Odegaard, with Eza, of course, moving into the right 10 role, instead he brought on Zubimendi. And so we went to kind of the usual midfield structure that we have been used to in the previous games. As Art pointed out to Mikel, he's brought on Waneri in these moments, in those matches. But this time he decided instead to go with Zubimendi, who was brilliant. And I asked Arteta and said, the fact that you suffered a couple of blows, but you had so much quality to bring on, is that maybe a difference that you were still quite comfortable today bringing on Zubimendi? But he also said, just in terms of bringing on Zubimendi, what was the thinking there? Because when Odegaard has come off before, Ethan's the one that has replaced him. So did you want something a bit different? And he said, yes, especially the way that they acted and the way that they were matching our midfield and the spaces that we could create with Zubi, I think was better. They didn't have any intention to play or combine in the first phase as well. So it was a lot of creating and direct play, second balls, and we wanted to make sure that we could control and dominate the game in that area. And that's the reason as to why. And Zubimendi was brilliant, like absolutely fantastic. Of course, it is his pass through to Eza that leads to the shot, which eventually leads to Arsenal's opening goal, which we'll come on to. But I mean, I don't like being the I told you so guy. But I did tell you the guy is unbelievably good. And in my opinion, is a world-class level player. And I said, once Partey was leaving, Partey's absence was obviously going to be felt because he was an important player for the team over the last 5 years. However, Zubimendi was going to evolve and improve and upgrade that position. And there is no doubt in my mind that he has absolutely done that. Zubimendi has taken that number 6 role to new heights this season with Arsenal. He is going to be, of the 8 signings this summer, in my opinion, potentially our best signing. And that is a very, very exciting prospect because it shows you just how good he is amongst how good all of the other signings, of course, for Arsenal have been over the course of that previous transfer window. But yes, Zubimendi, excellent display, excellent. Just a brilliant, wonderful footballer. And of course, it was his pass that led to Eze's shot, which of course was saved and parried into the pathway of Declan Rice, who, unlike Eze earlier on, made absolutely no mistake at all and finished very, very calmly. And he arguably wouldn't have been in this position, of course, had it have been a different player substituted for Odegaard that moved Rice into that offensive area, where, of course, he was there then to finish off the opportunity. His celebration, I really did enjoy it. Yes, it was muted. Yes, it was somewhat respectful. But I loved the fact that as he ran away from the shot, he just kind of checked over his shoulder. And that subtle kind of, I loved it. Absolutely loved the little nod and the kind of the look back at the West Ham fans. I mean, that was a great moment. Because I just don't understand. You know, I was chatting to Lawless yesterday, actually. I met up with Potsy and Lawless after the game, and I put it to Lawless. I just said, I don't get why. I just don't understand why West Ham fans are booing the guy so much. He gave you so much. He helped you win a European trophy, and he left for a lot of money after playing hundreds of games for you. I just don't understand why fans are booing the guy. I really don't get it. I don't understand it. It's a natural part. I mean, you should be annoyed at the club, not Rice. You should be annoyed at West Ham for getting you into a position where a player like Rice would want to leave. You know, it's just so baffling to me that they are so. It's so strange to see it. I know that I guess there's the London rivalry thing, but I mean, Arsenal and West Ham just haven't been rivals and aren't going to be rivals for a very long time. So I just don't really get it. It is very. If it was Spurs, I would understand it a bit more because they're kind of similar in terms of level. But I just don't. Arsenal and West Ham have just had no crossover really for a very, 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 very long time. So it's just a bit of a strange one. I don't get it. I don't get it. It's very, very odd behaviour. Jurrien Timber, of course, won the penalty in the second half. But I'm bringing this up now because I think there's an argument for a penalty in the first half. Now, I have looked high and I have looked low for the images. So I'm asking and calling on your help. I'm calling on your help here for you to somehow find the images and the video and the clip of the Timber penalty in the first half. Because for me, right at the end of the first half, Timber's in the box. He goes to take a shot. And as he pulls his striking leg backwards, he gets a swift kick from behind, which obviously stops him from shooting and brings him down. The player who connects with him gets absolutely nothing of the ball, and Timber's down in the box. It's the chance that then leads to Calafiori's shot hitting the post. So if anybody can get me images and replays of this moment, because I have really tried to find that moment, because for me it's a bit strange that I can't seem to find that image. It will be preceding the Calafiori chance. So I'd love to see it in more detail, because for me, from the stands, and when I saw it on a quick replay, it looked like a penalty to me. It really did look like a penalty to me. So a bit of a strange one, that. But let's fast forward to the second half and, of course, to the penalty that Arsenal eventually win, because it's caused a little bit of controversy, this. There's a few people who aren't really sure whether or not this is a penalty, whether it's outside the box, inside the box. It's definitely a foul. I don't think there's any question marks over whether or not this is a foul. But what I've asked a couple of questions to some people who are more in the know than I am about these sort of things. And this is the image that I got sent back by those people. And all you need to do is look at where Juve's left leg is what I'm being pointed towards. I'm being pointed towards Juve's left leg. So if you have a look at where Juve's left leg is, you'll see that his left leg is clearly inside the box. The contact that Jurrien Timber is making with that left leg, of course, towards the upper part of the leg is also inside the box. So while this starts outside the box, the challenge and the planted leg that you can see there, and by the way, a planted leg can indeed still give away a penalty, as you all believed it should have done at Newcastle, remember, and the contact that is made. I'm in one of those where if the ref gives it, I don't want to see VAR getting involved, and it didn't. If the ref doesn't give it, I also don't really want to see the VAR getting involved. I think this is a referee's call because it's clearly a foul. There's clearly contact outside the box, and there's clearly contact that continues inside the box. So I think it's to the discretion of the referee here. And here the referee, who I thought had a pretty poor game, to be honest. I thought the refereeing of the game overall was pretty darn poor. So many fouls that weren't given, that were just blatant. It's all well and good letting the play go and letting the game flow a bit more, but there were some horrendous decisions and fouls given that weren't fouls, and moments given that were definitely fouls that weren't given. So I thought the referee was pretty dire, to be honest, on the day. But I am a little surprised that VAR didn't overturn this in some ways, but only because of the rhetoric and the record that we've got with VAR. But I think that for Jurrien Timber, the foul definitely continues into the box. And so that's why I think that it is a penalty in this instance. So, yeah, and this, as I say, I spoke to people that are a lot more in the know about the rules of the game than I am. And this was the image that I got sent back and was asked to look specifically at the contact on Juve's left leg and where his left leg is clearly planted inside the box. And of course, if you look kind of straight up from where his foot is planted, that kind of higher part of his left leg is making contact with Timber still in the box, as indeed he is then going to ground and being impeded from carrying on. So that's why the pen was given. And of course, Saka then scores his 100th goal involvement for Arsenal in his 200th appearance for the club in the Premier League. Brilliant achievement, brilliant moment. What a record. He becomes the 8th player in Arsenal's history, I believe, to reach 100 goal involvements in the Premier League. So, yeah, 55 goals, 45 assists in 200 games for Saka in the Premier League. Brilliant return. What a player. Good to see him back, and good to see him involved as much as, of course, he was in the fixture too. But the day wasn't finished. I finished my duties in the press conference after the game. I've kind of gone through many of those answers. Just if you want to know what kind of my question in the press conference was, I just said to Mikel, I said on Calafiori, I was under the impression that he was a left back, but he's played pretty much everywhere on that field. And so what does his role bring to the team? And Arteta says, yeah, a lot of dynamism, sometimes a bit chaotic, but I think his dynamism and the spaces and situations that he can create are very difficult to control, especially against a team that is very well organised, and you have to disrupt their organisation in order to create chances. And I think we've done that really well. Calafiori was great. Calafiori was brilliant. Absolutely loved to see it. But yes, the football carried on, and I made my way to the Tollington after the game to watch Chelsea's very late win over Liverpool. It was just so apt, I think, that again, another late goal in the 96th minute or whatever it was. Liverpool have won too many games this season, just undeservedly. Liverpool were not worthy table toppers, let's put it that way, at all. And I think the XG tables had them down as 8th. I think I saw XG Philosophy saying that the bill comes due for Liverpool in some senses because they have been outperforming what they have been expected to return. But very, very, very telling. I think that the results, again, are starting to, they're starting to slide a little bit for Liverpool. 3 defeats for them now in a row. They lost to Palace, lost to Galatasaray. They've now lost to Chelsea. And things aren't going to get any easier for them either. Now they host Man United, who, of course, are now off the back of a victory themselves. So hopefully that will be something of a catalyst in Man United's form now, and they can only say that for the next game. They have to go to Brentford, of course. Man City are playing at Brentford, of course, today, a little bit later on. Hopefully Brentford can do us a favour there too. And then they play Aston Villa, And then they have Real Madrid. They have Manchester City away from home at the start of November as well, before the next international break. This next period of games for both Arsenal and, of course, for Liverpool could be very telling about where the title race goes, and what the gap might be come the November international break is going to be very interesting. And I did somewhat predict that Manchester City were going to feature much more heavily than people thought. And Man City, I think, maybe in the end could end up being Arsenal's biggest challenger for the title this season. So we'll have to wait and see. But Liverpool are in a bit of bother. But I did enjoy Enzo Maresca's celebration. That was very enjoyable indeed. And as I say, it leaves Arsenal sitting top of the tree with 16 points after 7 games played. Liverpool on 15 points with 7 games played. Spurs yesterday winning narrowly at Leeds on 14 points. Bournemouth as well with their victory, also sitting on 14 points. Crystal Palace can go level on points with Liverpool today as well in the Premier League. So lots of opportunities for teams who obviously don't tend to get these types of places so high up on the table. They are away to Everton in a 2:00 kickoff. Newcastle hosting Nottingham Forest, Wolves hosting Brighton, Aston Villa hosting Burnley, and Brentford hosting Manchester City. As I've said, Chelsea move up to 6th in the table. 3 wins, 2 draws, 2 defeats for them. Sunderland, of course, with that defeat to Man United, see them move up into the top half of the table in 9th. Man City can move into 5th place should they beat Brentford away from home. Hopefully Brentford can get Arsenal a result. That's what we want to see, and fingers crossed that will be indeed the case. 4th red card in a row for Chelsea. Of course, it was the manager, not one of the players, getting the red card, but that is quite the record, isn't it? Four red cards in a row for Chelsea, either players or managers. It's not a great record. It's something that Arsenal, of course, had a bit of a problem with a few years prior, but certainly something that we want to see continue. But Chelsea one that we need to watch out for? I'm not sure. I still think that they're going to drop points. I still think other teams are going to drop points, but Arsenal just looks so good right now. I mean, the XG has been excellent. The shots conceded as well. It just doesn't look like David Raya is going to concede at all. There was 4 clean sheets in the Premier League from 7 games. We've conceded 3 goals. It's the same as Crystal Palace, but by far and away, other than Palace, the best in the league. Goal difference is 7 better off than Liverpool right now. And it's 3 better off than Manchester City right now by having, of course, played a game less. Arsenal just look so imperious at the moment, and they deservedly sit top of the table, because that is where absolutely we should be based upon the start of the season. And again, I do bring it back to that comment and the comments that were made after the Liverpool game, after the City game. And I was frustrated and annoyed sitting in that hotel room on Merseyside, very annoyed at the game and how it played out and how we hadn't got the result and how we'd lost that. And it was frustrating because Arsenal could easily be unbeaten at this point. They could be another point clear of Liverpool potentially, had they have got 2 points clear. 3 points? Yeah, 3 points clear of Liverpool had Arsenal, of course, have got that draw at Anfield right now, but we weren't. But what I would say is that, I remember saying that there's a run of games coming up. Yes, we've got City and Newcastle, and these are games that are really difficult for us. Forest, of course, as well, another team that previously have really challenged Arsenal in the past. Not so much the Emirates, of course, but still were something of a challenge. But Arsenal have overcome teams so well at the moment. They're now 5 points better off in the same fixtures played against the teams and the results that they got last season for the same fixtures. And of course, they managed to get a 6-point swing just in their last 2 games. Last season, they lost away at Newcastle. They lost at home to West Ham. They've now turned both of those games into victories, and Arsenal sit top of the table. So very impressive indeed. And you've got to just try and be top of everything. You want to get the best result in anything possible, whether it's the Premier League table, whether it's life, or whether it's internet security. And indeed, that is exactly why I would point you in the direction of NordVPN, because it is the table-topping VPN service out there. You can get a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner and getting yourself a significant discount in that realm. And if you're not happy with the service, whatever, you get a 30-day money-back guarantee. But change your geo digital location with just the tap of a single button. You can get fantastic protection, which if using a public Wi-Fi service is an absolute must in 2025 to stop those pesky little peeping toms from stealing your data. You need a VPN to save you in this digital age, and there is only one choice when it comes to VPN services, and that is indeed NordVPN. Well, let's go to part 2 of your questions and more right after this. So to start part 2, I want to start the conversation with something a little uncomfortable. At least I feel like it's an uncomfortable conversation because we're doing quite well at the moment. We're top of the table. Why do we want to talk about something that is a concern or a little worrying? But there is something it's just nagging at me at the moment. And I tweeted about this yesterday because it is nagging at me because I want it to be better, a lot better. I want it to be something which, when we're playing opposition sides, becomes almost like it's helping us and seeing us through to victory in the game. And it's fair to say that when I put a tweet out about this topic, particularly, it got quite a lot of attention. In fact, over 500,000 people viewed the tweet that I did indeed put out yesterday. And that is that is it time to have an awkward conversation about the Emirates atmosphere? Is this now the time to have an awkward conversation about the atmosphere inside the Emirates? Why is it as it is? And what can we do to fix it? Because I don't want it to just be a moaning episode. I don't want to sit here and moan about the atmosphere. I want to know what the solutions are. I want to discuss how it is improved. Can it be improved? Is also a very good question to ask also. Because the thing you have to remember is that Arsenal, and in particular the Emirates, but to be fair, Highbury as well, the Highbury Library and all this, there has been an association with Arsenal and poor atmospheres in their home stadium for a long time. Now, I'm going to go on record, as I have done before. The argument the ballot has a significant impact on this, for me, is absolute rubbish. It's a lazy argument. It's an argument that's particularly kind of peddled, I think, by, and I feel for them, I do, but it's particularly peddled by fans that have been negatively impacted by the introduction of the ballot. But the argument that the ballot has anything to do with the atmosphere being somewhat disappointing right now just falls and crumbles away when you discuss the numbers involved. Because of the 55,000 or so fans that are Arsenal associated, or at least should be Arsenal associated in that ground, 45,000, around 45,000 of those fans are meant to be season ticket holders, which means that more than 80% of the fans that are in that ground that are Arsenal supporters, or at least have Arsenal tickets, are fans that go and have been going, the majority of them at least, for the last foreseeable period of the past. So the idea that it's the ballot always to me just stinks of an inadequate argument and something of a salty one. Now, I also think it's worth pointing out the Ashburton Army element of this, and it's an uncomfortable conversation for some people. I get it, but it is definitely an aspect as well of this conversation. And if you're going to talk about the atmosphere, you have to talk about the section of fans that are doing their absolute utmost to try and improve the atmosphere. Now, the allocation, of course, as it's very well documented, of the Ashburton Army was reduced. It made it fall inside and correspond with other supporter groups that also get access to tickets inside the stadium. This is my understanding of it, at least. If there's anyone who wants to correct that, feel free. But this is my understanding of it. That, of course, that falls now within the same allocation of other groups inside the stadium. And before that wasn't the case. But I also would point to the fact that I personally think the Ashburton Army needs a rebrand. I think it needs to be scrapped and restarted, and I think it needs a fresh coat of paint, to be honest, for me, because all you need to do is a little bit of Googling, and you'll see far too many controversies associated with that group, in my opinion. And I think if I was, very much a decision maker within that group that recognized and probably knows the controversies associated with the group as well, I'd be saying, look, lads and lasses, I think we need to probably rethink this. I think it needs to be restarted. There's just been too many issues with it. It's the premise of the idea to be a dedicated group that tries to catalyze, if that's even a word, an atmosphere inside the stadium is something I'm very on board with. Very, very on board with. Massively so. And the effort that is undertaken to try and improve the atmosphere in the stadium, of course, is something that is greatly appreciated. But I just think that there's too much. There's too many issues with that at the moment, and that element that, in my opinion, I think it needs. I think it needs a refresh. I think it needs a rejig. I think it needs, because the concept absolutely is something I'm on board with. The idea of a group that kind of catalyzes, as I say, the atmosphere with the drum, whatever. Some people moan about the drum. I think if you're moaning about a drum in a stadium of a football ground, you need to get a bit of a grip. To be frank, to be blunt with you, it's a drum. Go to European grounds. Trust me, when I was in Bilbao, it was incredible, the noise in those stadiums. You go abroad, you go to kind of these foreign stadiums, foreign atmospheres. They put English stadiums to shame. And it is something about, I think, an English culture thing as well, an English football culture. I travel up and down the country. I've pretty much gone to every single Premier League ground at this stage. And it's not just an Arsenal problem. There are very few grounds where the atmospheres are genuinely brilliant every single week. Newcastle United are definitely one of those teams. Crystal Palace are definitely one of those teams. But overall, the atmospheres in most home stadiums in England aren't particularly great. They're just not. Even Liverpool, like the idea that Liverpool's atmosphere is like held aloft as kind of this example to the rest of the league. As soon as you hear the song at the beginning of the game and the "You'll Never Walk Alone," which is definitely a part of footballing culture. There's no doubt about that. It's a very sacred thing in English football is the "You'll Never Walk Alone" chant. And when you're in that stadium and you're in that noise and you hear it, if you don't get goosebumps when you hear it, I'm sorry, but you're made of stone. Whether you're an Arsenal fan or a Man United fan or whatever, it definitely is. But as soon as it finishes, the atmosphere in Liverpool, in Anfield, becomes very similar to that, to the majority of grounds elsewhere in the league. That is just all right. It's not impressive. It's not above average. It's just all right. But from an Arsenal point of view, it's definitely, for me, the atmosphere in the Emirates is a topic that needs to be talked about. But yes, for me, the ballot is, I can disregard it almost as an argument, because I think it's a lazy argument, because I think the people that get tickets on the ballot, the majority of them, at least at the very minimum, are fans that are desperate to want to go to games still. All the fans that, the majority of the fans that get tickets on the ballot are fans that are desperate to go to the ground, that are willing to make noise. Arguments about tourist fans, for me, only comes from a xenophobic background. Nothing more than that, because every fan I know that travels from further afield is utterly and entirely passionate about Arsenal. Sings, screams, shouts, makes noise. They know the chants. They know it all. So don't fall into a trap of xenophobia about fans coming from outside of N5, because that's lazy. And for me, they are some of the most passionate fans out there. Thirdly, if I'm on my third point, you know me and counting, I can't do it. The Ashburton Army problem, I don't know, I want to call it a problem, because I think that the essence of the idea is not a problem at all. It's absolutely a benefit to the atmosphere, but there's something in that I think needs to change. Something about that has to be changed, or started again, or rebranded, or just wipe the slate clean, identify the issues, somehow find a way of moving on from those issues and moving forwards with that, because there is too many issues associated with that group, in my opinion, based upon the evidence that we see, of course, reported, and that is widely available for you to go and see as well. And then, of course, there is the more pressing argument that more than 80% of fans in the stadium, Arsenal fans, of course, are season ticket holders. Is there a way of improving the atmosphere in the Emirates? That is the question that I have for you. That is the question. I don't really want to be talking about this as Arsenal just go top of the league, talking about something that's not as positive. And I wish we could be talking more about the fact that we're great, and we are great. But it is something that I noticed yesterday, and it's not something that I have. It's not something I've noticed before It's not something, sorry, that I haven't been unaware of as the season has kind of gone on. Nick B says, what about free beer? I mean, free beer is never going to happen. But what I do think can happen is I think there can be more incentives, of course. And there are certainly incentives to get people in the ground earlier. I think maybe there should be more of an effort at that. I think pre-pouring, if it's not done already, pre-pouring at half time definitely needs to be something that happens as well. So that there's kind of a more efficient route to getting drinks to fans at halftime. If it doesn't happen already, maybe you can tell me if you've noticed it already this year as well. Mike, though, just thinks it's a culture thing. And, this is also another important aspect. Is it something that we just need to not accept, but is it something that we just need to think at the end of the day, this is just how it is? This is just how it is in English football for the majority of grounds. This is what atmospheres are like. I worry that there's an element of entitlement to it, because I remember that 22-23 season. And that 22-23 season when we were surprised by how good we were and that we were suddenly in a title race, with that brought with it this wave of excitement and joy and appreciation and shock and awe. And the fans in the stadium rode that wave, and it was brilliant. And the atmosphere of that season was unbelievable. But almost immediately in 23-24 and then 24-25, it almost became, and it's bled into this season too, like that's now the norm and that's what we're expected to do. And therefore, as fans, if we're not winning a game inside 10 minutes, the atmosphere just goes like it just stops and it just doesn't build up. And it is frustrating, And if I'm obviously very restricted from making noise inside the press box, but whenever I go as a fan, which is, very sadly is very few times, at the moment. But it's just, there is the real thing about, being told to sit down, and I get it. Not everybody can stand, and I think that's important at the same time. But I almost think that there's something about the stadium that needs to be kind of more tailored to creating noise. If that means kind of designating standing areas. I know that the North Bank pretty much stands for the majority of the game anyway, but can there be more done to encourage that kind of atmosphere further around the stadium? That there's designated kind of seating areas more so. I don't think you should have designated standing areas. I almost think you should have designated seating areas. So people that want to sit and want to stay seated for the game, sit in those sections. But for everybody else, standing is encouraged. And I'm sure there's some safety and health and safety things that are associated with that as well. But again, I just think more needs to be done. And I know for a fact that Mikel in particular would love the stadium to be a lot more frenetic, is desperate for the stadium to be a lot more frenetic. And yes, exercises like the TIFO last season, say it how it is, was embarrassing. Like the TIFO last season, the execution of it, the design of it, all the lead up to it was not good enough. And in my opinion, what we saw against Real Madrid with kind of the red and white around the stadium, that's what we should do. The TIFOs are great, but I think the ones that are held aloft and lifted aloft, that's just not what we're about. That's not what we do good. That's not what Arsenal's Emirates Stadium does well. The Emirates Stadium looks great when it's lit up in red and white, all the placards around the ground, the flags work well, all of these things. Gaza says the Ashburton Army are not the problem. And as I'm saying, the concept of the Ashburton Army is not the problem. You categorically cannot say that a group dedicated to creating noise inside the Emirates, with that as their core primary existence reason, that cannot be the problem. However, all you need to do is a little bit of Googling and you see the issues that the group has had and the issues associated with the group, which is why I personally feel that a rebrand and a clean slate and a turning over and a new leaf for a group of that ilk needs to happen, because it's never going to grow beyond that allocation. I just can't see it with the issues that they had and the muddying of their name almost because of the actions of some individuals in that group. Not all of them. You can't tarnish a whole group with the same brush. You've got to speak about the problem people within it. Then for me, that's why it needs a complete rebranding and reset, restart, recharge, go again, and Until that happens, that's that element. While the concept is absolutely a wonderful thing, the execution of it obviously has had its problems. Robert says, I love some of the old Arsenal songs, some great players' songs, but need a great in-game Arsenal song. I mean, we have got lots of songs. Lots of songs. Ragamuffin, unfortunately, falls into the trap of blaming the ballot. Again, the ballot has absolutely nothing to do with the atmosphere being affected, because Arsenal's atmosphere has been notorious for being poor well before the ballot came along. Well before the ballot came along. And again, the percentage number of people that are going into the Emirates as a result of getting a ticket on the ballot is about, if not less than potentially 10%. And then you got to think about how many of those fans that are getting tickets from the ballot aren't singing. It's going to be even smaller percentage, because you're going to get a lot of fans that are getting tickets through the ballot that do sing, that do get involved with the atmosphere, that do make noise. So that percentage is going to go down even further. The ballot is a lazy, boring argument, and the ballot is a necessity, because while indeed it would be great if you could get a ticket, that you're not a season ticket holder, but you can get a ticket every week, great. The world does not revolve around you, and there's a lot of fans that want to go to games. There's a lot of professions that could not allow people to sit at whatever time in the morning, refreshing a page in a queue, waiting in a queue. Teachers, health workers, the list goes on, of the amount of professions of fans that deserve and have as much of a right as anyone else to go to a game, couldn't sit in that queue at that time and get a ticket. And those fans are just as worthy of getting a ticket as anybody else. Just because somebody else has the benefit of being able to sit in that queue, no matter what they do, that allows them to be able to do that, it does not mean that they are more entitled to a ticket than somebody who can't do that. And so that's one of the reasons why the ballot needed to be introduced. Second reason, of course, is to tackle touting, and of course tackling bot accounts, but not also that, but the physical people that still tout. And it's still a big problem. Touting is still a big issue, because while you can moan about people getting tickets on the ballot and you claim don't sing, don't do this, don't do that, believe me, you're going to get a lot of people that you necessarily would categorize as, quote unquote tourists. And when I say tourists, I'm not talking about fans from abroad. I'm talking about genuinely someone who's just going to the game because it's an Arsenal game. They may not even be an Arsenal fan. They're just going because they're a football fan or they want to go. That's the definition of a tourist. I think the term tourist fan it shouldn't even be used anyway. Remove the word fan from that, because if you're a quote unquote tourist fan, you're still a fan that's just come from outside of the local area to support the team that you support, that you're entitled to support. It's just, for me, it's just such a lazy argument, the ballot. It doesn't work. The ballot is a terrible, terrible argument. And it just comes from a place of saltiness from people that used to get tickets more regularly, that can't get tickets as often now. And I know that sucks. And I empathize with you completely. But that's not a reason to blame bad atmosphere on something that exists after the fact that we've known for a long period of time the atmosphere in the Emirates has not been good enough. JD says, first game yesterday, and my son's left with no voice. The family area, but it was quiet. Always been an issue. But well done, Tom. It needs to be talked about, and the club needs to try and find ways to improve it. Steve says, I totally disagree with away fans being in the top tier, as it's too easy to throw things onto fans underneath. It's a very fair argument from Steve. And I get frustrated that the fact that in places like Newcastle, I mean, is there an issue with fans throwing things down from the away section? Does it happen? How often does it happen? Is it a documented issue at St. James's Park? Why is it allowed there and not allowed somewhere else? I don't know. It's very difficult. Mark says, get members from the Ashburton Army, Arsenal Supporters Trust, and Ben Winston, of course, new member of the board. It's a non-executive director role to improve the atmosphere. I mean, we now have more fan representation, arguably, on the board. So it needs to be something that can be discussed, definitely. Nasir says it's way too early in the season to have a serious atmosphere. I don't agree with that at all. I think you can have a great atmosphere from day dot, as do Newcastle, as do Crystal Palace. How come those teams have great atmospheres from day dot, but it's too early in the season, apparently, for Arsenal? I don't see how that works as an argument. Kean says, nothing to do with the dynamics of the crowd. It's all about the tempo of the game. A 50-50 high-tempo game and the decibels will go through the roof. I mean, but does that mean that we have to be worse? Like, because we're so dominant and so in control of games, that the atmosphere suffers. Like, we peppered West Ham yesterday. It was chance after chance after chance. We were dominant. We were in the box constantly. There was 3 penalty shouts. There was 2 goals. There was a moment where they should absolutely have put Arsenal ahead. Like, why isn't that conducive of an improvement in the atmosphere? I'm not sure. Maximius says, Tom, you mentioned Arteta. How keen and serious are the ownership in getting the atmosphere up in the stadium? Are they making efforts towards that direction? Well, what we hear is, of course, they're looking at making improvements in the stadium. Does that include something that will help improve the atmosphere? I hope so. They invest. I've still got this cough. I can't get rid of it at the moment. They've still got, they invest in the pyrotechnics, they invest in the fire and the fireworks and, in the placards, and they tried to do something with the TIFO. It was terribly executed, but the idea was there. So yes, the investment is coming in. So it's absolutely worth thinking about that. Curtis says, I hate that it's taking others' respect and us to finally go top for our own fans to take us seriously. I wouldn't worry. I mean, if you've not been taking Arsenal seriously over the last few years, I don't know what to tell you at this point. But I wouldn't worry about those people. Claire says, cut out the smoking, Tom. Never touched a cigarette in my life, Claire. It's just that issue. I got ill in Bilbao and I've just not been able to shake this cough since then. Andy says, in that surprise title fight 3 years ago, the Emirates were rocking. I read a reply to TC from someone on X says, we want the team to make us come alive. Yeah. You don't. I get that you want the players to be able to generate something as well, but you're going there as a fan to support it. The clue's in the name. You need to generate as much. The 12th man. You've got to be the 12th man. You don't need the players to induce an atmosphere. You need yourself to induce an atmosphere. That's the issue there. Patrick says, we're top of the league and we're criticising our own fans. What are we doing here? It's all good. People can enjoy the games as they please. It's not about where we are in the league. It's not about we being top and now we're kind of pointing fingers at fans or whatever. It's about the fact that this is something that could make Arsenal even better, even tougher to beat. It's the thing that we can control. We can't control anything else. We can't control how they play. We can't control the tactics. We can't control how they defend or how many mistakes there are or what the formation is or what the lineup is or who they sign. But what we can control is how intimidating this ground is for any other opposition to come to that ground. We can generate an atmosphere which makes the Emirates much, much trickier for opponents to face. And that gives the players, of course, that belief, an added little bit of oomph from a mental standpoint to give you something of an edge. So it's not about moaning at fans, Patrick. I think that dresses up the point entirely insincerely for me. It is about what we want Arsenal to be, the best version that Arsenal can possibly be. And they are doing absolutely everything within their power to try and do that. Whether it spending record amounts on transfers, whether it being a brilliant squad right now, whether it being the manager, of course, getting Arsenal back into the position that we've wanted them to be in for however many years, which is competing for all the titles. And at the end of the day, we can only control us. Fans can only control us. So it's not about criticizing fans. It's about asking the question, what more can be done to improve the atmosphere at the Emirates? Because the end result, if it is an improvement in atmosphere, the result of that can only be a good thing. So it is somewhat dismissive and naive and a little ignorant to turn around and say, we're top of the league. Why are you moaning about fans? Because we should ultimately always be striving to be the best version that we can be of ourselves. So if our team is top of the table, what's going on the pitch must be pretty darn good. So we're doing as much as we effectively can be in that regard because we're top of the league. So let's look elsewhere. Where else can we make improvements? Well, the atmosphere is not necessarily popping at the moment. What can we do to improve that? And so I think that's certainly something. And, I think the Arsenal DJ, of course, Peter does a great job behind the scenes. I think that Mitchell, of course, the DJ, does absolutely brilliant as well. in the kind of the PA announcer. He does great things too on the field. Nigel Mitchell, I think. It's just, it's on us. It's on us. I think people should be arriving early and leaving late, not arriving late and leaving early. It's another aspect I think that can be potentially encouraged. And that comes down to the club too. Can put more exercises to try and encourage fans to get into the ground sooner, get into the seats sooner. Definitely needs to be something that's improved in that aspect as well. Paul says, I think the atmosphere has a lot to do with the season ticket holders. I've sat in seats where I've been singing and getting awkward looks from the middle class fans around me. I don't know how you know they're middle class, Paul, to be fair. No idea how you know that. But as I said, the season ticket argument for me is the one that completely disproves the ballot, because the ballot makes up, as I say, for fans that are getting tickets on the ballot, that account for about a single-digit percentages of the full stadium of Arsenal fans. So it just doesn't really work. Yaya says ticket prices mean it will be a certain financial caliber of fans that will go to the games. NBA has the same issue, so the fans that go there wouldn't be as loud. I mean, why? I'd need some evidence to suggest why ticket prices out louder fans. Why are fans that can't afford ticket prices louder than fans that can? I mean, what's the explanation there? What's the I don't see how that. Look, I'm all for ticket prices coming down as 100%. I'm all for reduction in ticket prices and making a game even more accessible. The irony, of course, being that the people complaining about the ballot right now are the same people that complain if the ticket prices came down, even more fans would be able to go to the game, making it even more difficult for them to get tickets. The irony is not lost on me. So I don't really get this. So yeah, I don't really understand that one. Nelson said, I've seen multiple interviews where players say they want the stadium loud. How many times does Odegaard have to tell the crowd to get louder? I think the message from even Trossard was kind of going, like, at some point in the game in the second half, even Trossard was trying to get more of a noise from the crowd. And if Trossard's doing that, knowing Leo, I mean, come on, we need to get a bit of a reaction. Martin says, Tom, when you stop being naive, the majority of the fan base has a crazy level of entitlement and expectation. And I don't think I'm naive, because I think I already said that, Martin. I think I already said that there is a level of entitlement about Arsenal being in a title race. And if we're not winning after 10 minutes, the atmosphere suffers, as a result. Mike, though, says, Tom, now you're being disingenuous. Professionals have conventional decorum, which seeps into their personal life, so I can see how they can affect the atmosphere. Again, I don't know what. That's a lot of words, but not a lot of reason. I don't really understand what you're saying. I like big words, but even then, you might need to dumb it down a little bit for me, please. Yeah, that was kind of my reaction, Spearmint. And Claire says, Leo does like to complain, though. It does indeed. Curtis says, yeah, when Trossard did that, I knew the crowd weren't at it. When Leo's asking you to make a bit of noise, when moaning Leo, trying to get it to be a bit louder, goodness me, it must be bad. Sooty says, I've heard a lot of people critiquing Gyökeres, but do you agree that he is playing well and increasing in confidence whilst having an impact for the team as a whole? So against Newcastle and against Olympiacos, I thought he had good games. 6, 7 out of 10 games, decent. Obviously, I think the aspect of his striker role of scoring goals needs to improve. I didn't think he was particularly great yesterday. I'll be very honest about that. I didn't think Gyökeres had a particularly good game. I mean, I don't think he had a shot, did he? Or I think he had a bit of a glancing header, but I wouldn't really count that as a shot. Am I concerned? Like, a little bit. I think I'll be naive or ignorant to say I'm not concerned a little bit. I think the fact that I'm concerned can be encapsulated by the fact that I am very keen for Kai Havertz to come back soon. I really, really hope that Kai Havertz comes back soon. That's not a slight on Gyökeres. I want Arsenal to be as strong as possible and to have as many options as possible. But it would be helpful in games where Gyökeres isn't being impactful to have kind of that element, if you like, improved. Yeah, so I think the one he had that kind of went, that absolutely when he was on the floor, that kind of was hit off the line, like That wasn't a particularly well executed opportunity, and if it was his only shot of the game at home against West Ham, when you've created over 3 XG in the total match, he should be getting more. I don't think necessarily you can blame that on service in this game. I don't think that can be blamed in this one. I think you can blame it against Liverpool and Man United and City. I think you can blame service in those games. I don't think you can blame it here. B-Dot says, how many of the season tickets actually and how many sell their tickets on average? If it's the 20, 30%, nearly half the stadium is, I mean, also to suggest that any ticket being bought by someone who's selling their season ticket is bought by a tourist is bollocks. So I don't know ultimately how many season ticket holders sell on their tickets, but the amount that do put them on the ticket exchange has improved because Arsenal have laid out sanctions for the fans that don't turn up for their ticket. The biggest the biggest kind of challenge for Arsenal is, for me, touting. Like, touting is the biggest problem. It is by far the biggest issue. There are too many utter cretinous, I was going to use another C word then I can't use, horrible touting idiots in Arsenal's fan base that own, and it's not like they're covert. It's not like you struggle to find them on a match day. That's what frustrates me so much about touts, is that whenever I walk to the Emirates, I pass about 20 of them. It's not like they're covert. They're pretty overt in how they operate. And I just wish more action was taken to take them down. I really do. Because they are the enemy of the atmosphere. Touts are the enemy of Arsenal's Emirates Stadium atmosphere, no doubt in my mind. And I'm sure there are some fans that do buy tickets at ridiculous prices from touts that also go and shout and scream and make loads of noise. But there is a far greater chance of those that are going just to be a genuine tourist who just go there to see a game. Anthony, touts are people that sell tickets illegally. So they'll get a ticket and they'll sell it for a massively overinflated price to whoever will pay them. That's what a tout is. So I hope that makes sense for those that didn't know what a tout was. But they are the enemy of Arsenal. And it's always shocks me how more people don't question them. Because if you're one of those fans that's so desperate to go to games more often, that's so desperate to get your hands on tickets more often, these are the main people. These are the people that are preventing Arsenal's atmosphere as for me as a primary. Yeah, of course, touting's illegal. Of course, you can't sell your ticket on at an inflated price from what it initially cost. That is illegal. Yes, 100%. I mean, unless somehow there's some kind of legal loophole that I'm forgetting about. All About Law website says ticket touting, though strictly illegal, has been part and parcel of attending events since before the dawn of the internet, but it's particularly in the footballing sphere that it's become a real issue, and it's a piece that takes a look at the legal standing on this. So outside of football, the secondary ticket market is worth over $1 billion a year apparently, but remains controversial. One of the key reasons for this is that professional touts can harvest tickets, restricting supply, meaning that genuine fans have to pay over the odds to see their favorite artists. Adele, for example, tried to deny resellers any access to her sold-out tour, but despite her best efforts, tickets with a face value of £100 were being resold for over £700, earning the touts a cozy profit, putting fans out of pocket. It also says, whilst tougher laws have come in, there appears to be no end in sight to ticket touting, and at least for now, the internet has facilitated a near unbreakable marketplace for touts to utilize. Now, in my opinion, there are some strategies that can be put in place to stop touts, but they will require collaboration with the Met in particular, and there needs to be kind of some undercover activity, basically, to catch touts. It's not just about catching all of them, because you're not going to do that. It's about creating a bigger deterrent. You've got to create a much bigger deterrent for touts to be put off of being in and around the Emirates Stadium and trying to sell tickets on. And it bugs me so much that it's done so brazenly. touting is done so brazenly and so confidently and with so little repercussion that's what makes it so frustrating for me as a fan when I walk to the stadium and I just hear it. Tickets. Anyone want tickets? Tickets. Just hear the word tickets. It'll be a great day when I can walk to Arsenal Football Club and not hear the word tickets as I'm walking up to the stadium. That'll be a great feeling. The first, and I tell you what, I don't think in the hundreds of times I've done it that has ever happened. I don't think I have once been able to walk to the Emirates Stadium, particularly from Arsenal Station or Holloway Road, where I haven't heard the word tickets. So, please. Let's go to Don says, Tom, the ballot makes it more accessible to all fans because I'm sure they don't want to go back to lining up at the stadium. Countless times I did that at Highbury, and if you have a 9 to 5, there's no hope for you. Exactly. The ballot does make it more accessible to more fans. That is a good thing. We shouldn't be gatekeeping the Emirates Stadium or the Arsenal capacity to anybody in terms of Arsenal fans. Like if you're an Arsenal, that's the only gatekeeping I will in fact enforce or be in support of, is that it should be. I'm happy to gatekeep it amongst Arsenal fans. There should be no one inside an Arsenal section that isn't an Arsenal fan, and there should be things put in place as best possible to try and prevent that. And there are. But if you are an Arsenal fan, you have just as much of an entitlement to go to a game as anyone else, whether you're 80 or 20, whether you've supported the club for a day or for a year or for 50 years. If you are a dedicated, passionate Arsenal fan, which you can be after a single day, then you have as much of a right to go to a game as anybody else. Same as anybody who lives within 5-minute walk of the stadium to a 5-hour flight of the stadium. If you are a dedicated, passionate Arsenal fan, you have as much of a right to be in that stadium as anybody else does. You are no more of a fan just because you live around the corner compared to if you live over the pond. For me, it's the luck of where you were born should have absolutely no reason in why you're entitled to a ticket more than somebody else. The only reason to be able to buy a ticket should be, I'm an Arsenal fan. That's it. Simple as that. B. Dot says, touts probably have about 50 tickets between all of them. Oh. Now, if we want to talk about naivety, this is what you would define as naivety. 100%. Because if you think that touts are responsible for about 50 tickets on a match day, my goodness me, you have no idea how big the problem of touting is. Arsenal have banned hundreds of thousands of bot accounts that belong to touts. Hundreds of thousands. Now, of course, many of them will belong to individuals. And over the years, obviously, some hundreds of memberships have also been cancelled as a result of the touting mission of the club as well. It's a topic I'm really passionate about and love covering and would love to do more into from a journalism standpoint as well. But to say and sit there and think that you think 50 tickets, that means you do not appreciate the problem. You do not appreciate how big of a problem it is and how big of a problem it has been. It is mad how many. It's so significant how many tickets are being sold. And it's one when we need to get more data as well. Let me see if I can find you some of the numbers in regarding kind of tickets and touts. Let me see if I can find it for you. Because I've done some pieces on it with some information from the club as well. Done a ballot theory piece. Where's the one about numbers and being banned? Arsenal crackdown on ticket touting. Is this the one I piece in 2024? So Arsenal cancelled 24 season tickets last season. This was written in 2024. Following increased demand for tickets, the club brought in a policy at the start of 23-24 season that that meant fans had to use their season ticket for 17 out of 22 matches. If they were not able to attend themselves, supporters were advised that they need to make the ticket available on the ticket exchange. And if it wasn't used, of course, those memberships would be cancelled. But that's not the piece that I was thinking about. Is it this one? I think this is it. Yes, Arsenal have reinstated 322 previously suspended club memberships following a targeted operation which led to 16 lead members of a touting operation being permanently banned. The operation comes out as the club continues to crack down on ticket touting. This was one of the targeted operations aimed at stamping out ticket touting. Together with our supporters, we care deeply about this issue and we continue to take strong action against members who break the terms and conditions to buy tickets. Which obviously is really important. In March of last year, Football London was told that a club suspected 300,000 bots had been blocked in the time since the club have announced further accounts have been blocked. So I wouldn't be surprised if by now we were talking about close to 1 million, easy, maybe even more, bot accounts having been blocked. It's that significant of a problem. We're talking about membership-wise, hundreds of thousands, potentially over 1 million. Being blocked is nuts. Absolutely crazy. Mike says, I hear what you're saying, but in this context regarding the atmosphere, I think touting is a negligible impact. Well, I think that's naive, Mike. With respect, I think that's naive. But for me, it is a problem. It's not, I'm not saying it's the main problem. I'm saying it's one of the problems. And I don't think it has a negligible impact. I think it has a impact. For me, it's more about, I think for me, the main focus is on the 45,000 season ticket holders. That for me is the bigger thing. It's about how do we encourage more people to be generating more atmosphere of the bulk number of fans that attend games every single week. How can we encourage the stadium to be more noisy? What can we do to improve that? That's the bigger question. Absolutely. So that's why for me, the ballot isn't the focus in terms of atmosphere. It's not about tourists necessarily. It's more to do with the existing 45,000 season ticket holders and how can we generate a greater atmosphere from those that are going regularly to games. That's the question we have to ask. And I don't necessarily know the answer to that at the moment. And that's why I put it to you always about why or what can we do. We spent a lot of time on this topic today. That for me is the main focus of the attention. For me, though, the ballot conversation is always just so negligible, and people who underestimate the power and the impact of touts, I think you're naive. Is kind of the roundup. But yeah, and I think also that the Ashburton Army element is certainly something to also consider. But as I say, those that just blindly say that the Ashburton Army should be reinstated to their initial allocation, you need to do some research on why, first of all, that allocation was cut and why there are absolutely no, from my understanding, at least intentions or plans to increase that allocation. And I think it needs a rebrand. I think it needs something different, something new, something has to change there because there's issues and those issues need to improve significantly before we can get on to the next kind of phase of that improvement. But the concept is perfect. The concept is absolutely something that is needed, in my opinion. Absolutely something that is needed. Mitchell says, daylight savings kicked in Sydney today, and I was wondering where you were. Oh, well, there you go, our Australian listeners. Thank you for joining us at a different time of day. Daylight savings has changed that for you, I guess. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. I really do appreciate your time. And I'm sorry that we've taken up so much of today's show with, of course, this discussion around tickets and the atmosphere and things like that. I think it's an important topic that we do discuss now and again, especially when it is more relevant. But Arsenal are top of the league. Mikel Arteta's Arsenal indeed are sitting top of the tree, deservedly so. And it is nice to see just it's nice to see kind of not the I told you so element of it because, we've not done anything yet and we're only 7 games in. But it's nice to know where things were only a few games ago, despite the injuries as well that we're suffering on a regular basis. 6 out of 7 Premier League games, Arsenal have lost at least one player to injury this season, which is mental. But Arsenal are deservedly top of the league. So, yeah, AFC Pulse, is this the last show before the internationals? No, I'm taking a break over the weekend, but that's it. Saturday, Sunday, I'll be off. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there will be shows. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday after the weekend. So only Saturday, Sunday am I taking off next week. But I'll be back with you tomorrow to talk more about, of course, what happens today in the Premier League. Some more fallout from the Premier League weekend and hopefully some updates on injuries. But hope you have an absolutely fantastic Sunday. Enjoy yourself. Stay safe. Stay well. Stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.